Good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth held on Monday, September 28th, 2020. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to all of those who are tuning in via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors and staff who will participate in this meeting tonight. At this time, of course, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. A few comments from me tonight with regards to the COVID-19 circumstances we find ourselves in with the release of updated instructions from Dr. Clausen, Medical Officer of Health for Huron-Perth Public Health. Key designated staff have updated internal policies related to wellness assurances, hygiene availability and instructions, and mask wearing. We heard the concerning news this morning about the highest single-day test yield for COVID-19 in Ontario, and this should cause us all to pause and reflect on the rudiments again, the things that we've been asked to do. I will note that I am taking note of gatherings still happening since the increased restrictions were applied by the province. And I'm telling you in a firm way that this needs to stop. It will be a very expensive proposition if you are caught. I've observed careless use of masks, in particular failure to cover the nose, and that's something that the Medical Officer of Health has asked us to do. The maintenance of 2 meters of distance in public spaces or with people not in your social circle seems to be diminishing. And even the fundamental understanding of what the social circle is a bit mixed up right now. As a reminder, according to the Province of Ontario website, a social circle is up to 10 people. Those in your household automatically count towards the 10. The remaining people you add to your circle can only be in your circle. They cannot belong to 5 other circles through 5 other people. This is a tight group, and the province has indicated that those over 70 years of age, those with compromised immune systems, and those with underlying medical conditions should not even join a social circle that is outside the walls of their home. The indicators are not looking very welcoming right now. We need to remain vigilant. When you are tired, just think of your favorite healthcare system worker and find the energy to continue with the best practices for them. Let's move on then to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest, including those who have declared already in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk, if not already done. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. I've had a few reach out to me already, so why don't we start with Councillor Anstead.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on item 5.4.1, the accounts, as my son attends the St. Mary's daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks. And that's a happy news story, the St. Mary's daycare. I like hearing that. First time, I'm sure, of many. Next up is Councillor Barons.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'd like to declare a conflict on the accounts 5.4.1 as well as 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I would also like to declare pecuniary interest on the accounts of 5.4.1, with regards to Perth Meadows, as my mother and father-in-law are tenants, as well 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. And has Councillor Johnston joined us? Councillor Johnston?
Good evening, Mayor Todd. Yes, I would declare a conflict on 5.2.1 because I'm an officer on a corporation that owns land within 120 meters, and then also 13.1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other councillor wishing to make a declaration at this time before we proceed with other business in our meeting? Okay, so let's move on. Then let's explain our virtual processes. I should know this by heart by now. I will systematically be trying to seek consent from councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that we put before us tonight. I will do this alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without intervention from me. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say beyond those first two will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you're not audible, I will call on you. You do not need to ask if you can be heard. I'll be the arbiter of that. Councillors are further asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction, which could happen. As well, should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, I will call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At any time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no on the motion, then return to mute. Regarding item 2.2 on our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows. That the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Councillor Behrens, can I call on you to serve as mover for that?
Yes, I will move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Duncan, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 3, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 4 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Please indicate to the clerk through the chat function. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Kaysenberg. I would like to have comment about item 3.4, Blue Water Recycling Association highlights, if I may.
Certainly. Is it something that you want us to hold off on approving this or considering this in our consent agenda? Or should we just have your comments at this point?
If I could just provide a comment, I'd appreciate that. I don't want to hold up the matter. I just want to underscore through you, Mr. Mayor, the importance to our community to ensure that they're not putting things that should not be recycled into the recycling. As you'll see on the comments, there's been a lot of personal protective equipment, masks and so on, which unfortunately are being put into our recycling bins, and that creates a significant problem for us in terms of us being the Blue Water Recycling Association that clearly should not be put in the recycling containers. So please ensure that masks, gloves, paper towels, tissues, wipes, etc. are in the garbage as opposed to the recycling. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Very good point. And I thought the newsletter from the association was effective in supporting that. Councillor next.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Kasenberg. My question is just around item 3.2 on the consent agenda regarding the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding our development charges. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate, and perhaps you can provide a recommendation here, but I'm just wondering if we could get a little bit more information perhaps from Fran in terms of the impact of this on us as a council. And perhaps that might be a good idea to do through the reports, but perhaps you could provide a recommendation for us. Thank you.
Thanks. Why don't we pick that up under council reports, section 6 of our agenda, as you suggested. That seems like a good idea to me. Any other questions or comments or reasons to extract items from the consent agenda from council at this point? We're not seeing any. Okay. So Councillor Andreessen, I'll call on you again in section 6 if I may. Let's have a look at the resolution proposed to us. That consent items 3.1 to 3.4 be received for information and the minutes of the September 21st, 2020 regular council meeting be adopted. Deputy Mayor Kellum, can I call on you to be the mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate, council? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up then is agenda item number 4. As you'll see tonight, we don't have public meetings or delegations scheduled for our meeting this evening, which means we can move on directly to agenda item number 5. This is reports from departments and key staff. We have tonight no reports from the CAO's department. He is with us at the meeting should questions arise that require his wisdom, which brings us then to item 5.2. For item 5.2.1, Council is provided with a report from North Perth planner Sean Yilmaz, which outlines the request for a zoning bylaw amendment related to land in Britain in the Elmo ward. I'll ask Mr. Yilmaz to review this proposed matter, which Council has seen bits of before. Mr. Yilmaz, welcome.
Hi, good evening, and thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, members of Council. So if Council can recall, this is a familiar one on the agenda. But Council had recently turned down an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Caroline Baker and John Friesen. However, at that moment, at that previous date, Council elected not to consider the bylaw associated with the application. At the advice of the applicant's legal representative, it is requested that North Perth Council formally consider the proposed bylaw, and then if defeated, it would effectively provide the applicant with the opportunity to appeal the decision of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yilmaz. Councillors, any questions or first comments about this matter before we put the motion on the floor? Quick thoughts? Okay, so I have a resolution for consideration related to this matter. That bylaw number 110-2020 being a bylaw to amend the North Perth zoning bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Richardson, would you serve as mover for that one?
Yes, I will move that motion.
Thank you. And I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Seiler, would you second that?
Yes, I'll second that.
All right, thank you. All right, discussion and time, council. Is there anything showing in the box? Okay, so it is important for council to understand the consequences of, as I understand, so I'll call on the CAO to weigh in should he so wish. With an action taken here, should this not be favorable to the applicant, there are which apply to the organization, in that we will have to defend against a claim that may be made in this. So I'm advising council, potentially, depending on the outcome of this, there is certainly consequences should the applicant seek relief for our choices.
Councillor Behrens.
Councillor Behrens?
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Well, I do understand that this is a difficult situation. I still maintain that our rural residential or our hamlets or villages certainly are for residents. This is a residential lot, and any business should not be found on a residential lot in a village or hamlet. There are other areas within most villages that commercial industry can take place, but not in a, I mean, if you have simply some empathy for the neighbors, knowing that they bought theirs property for sheer residential enjoyment, and now the rules are changing. I don't believe this to be good planning. I don't believe it is within the PPS, and I don't believe it is within the official plan of Perth County. So I will be voting against this motion. Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg.
Thanks, Councillor Behrens. Anyone else at this point? Clerk Fairfields?
No, other than
Yeah, Councillor Behrens, we were having a little bit of audio trouble from your feed, but I think we got most of what you were saying. Just be aware that we have a little bit of concern tonight about that, especially after last week's episode where you were dropped completely. So empathy on that one for sure. Any other councillor wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, we're not seeing any other indication. So let's have the vote. Councillor Rothwell, we're not recording a vote from you at this point. What say you?
Yeah, the vote didn't come up. I am not in favor. Thank you.
Okay, so you're opposed, so call that opposed, please. And I believe that's the entire complement based on a 9 for one who's excluded himself of the junior interest. So that motion is defeated. Thank you. Next up is item 5.2.2. Report from the clerk pursuant to a delegation to and request of this council made during our last regular council meeting by Mr. Paul Horn of Gallenstown. He has asked council to waive a fee related to a zoning bylaw application pursuant to some specific circumstances in his case. I don't know, is it Mr. Yilmaz who will represent this? Okay, thank you. Mr. Yilmaz, I'll ask you just to remind us of the circumstances and the recommendation.
Yes, thank you. So just to add, at last week's meeting, sorry, but if there's some feedback, North Perth Council requested staff obtain a legal opinion to determine the legality of waiving such a fee and to investigate whether fees have been waived for Planning Act applications in the past. The municipal solicitor has determined that if council feels that it would be unreasonable to require the payment for a zoning bylaw amendment application fee. In this particular case, council is permitted to reduce that fee to waive or reduce that fee under the Planning Act. Additionally, it was staff's understanding that a planning application fee has not been waived as the result of a request from the applicant in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, before we consider the resolution, any questions or first comments on this matter? Please indicate to the clerk. Councillor Behrens.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'm just curious. This deals with, there were two requests. Originally, Mr. Horn requested that we simply rescind the bylaw. Is that no longer possible?
Mr. Yilmaz?
Well, I'm sorry, we didn't look too much into that, but in terms of rescinding the bylaw, it would still have to go through the Planning Act process, which would still require the amendment fee, typically, because it would have to still go through a public process, just like any other zoning bylaw amendment application. I'm not sure if that helps.
Okay. CEO Snell, you have anything on this one?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. Sean's correct. As per the Planning Act, we can't rescind the bylaw like we could for any other normal bylaw. We would still have to go through the whole Planning Act application, which is basically a zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning of a property, whether that's through what might be considered a rescinding of the bylaw, but really it is the creation of a new bylaw, providing that property zoning rights under the Planning Act.
Thanks, Mr. Yilmaz and Mr. Snell. Any other questions or first comments from council at this point? I'm Greg Bearfelds. No indication of same. Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration then, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the request from Paul Horn to waive the fee for a zoning bylaw amendment application in the amount of $1,600. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that?
Yes, I will move that.
Thank you. And let's see here. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell as our seconder?
I'm willing to second the motion to put it on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Discussion and debate. Council, let's hear from you if you have comments to make. Anything from council? Okay, so the clerk.
Sorry.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm not the best typer or the quickest one. I just worry about the precedent that we would be setting if we approve this, that any other land that we have rezoned or anything that an owner, that somebody buys could think that they could come back and get it changed back to the original zoning because of the precedent that we'd be setting with this. So I will be voting opposed to this. I'm just worried about the precedent we'd be setting.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to ask a question, debate, discuss this? Thanks. While I understand that you can implement resolutions without setting precedent, I do have a few concerns here too. So anyway, let's have that vote.
It's Councillor Ansett. My vote did not pop up, but I am not in favor. Thank you.
Thanks. So that is defeated. Thank you. That moves us on to agenda item number 5.3. We don't have an indication of a report tonight from our Recreation Department, but they continue to work diligently on behalf of the mandate they have from this council. Let's turn next then to item 5.4, reports from the Treasury and Finance Department. We have as item 5.4.1, report to council with the review of accounts as of September 28th, 2020. I'll note that 3 councillors, I believe, have declared potential pecuniary interest in this item and thus will absent themselves from consideration and voting. Are there any questions about this for our staff before we consider the resolution? Anything? Okay. So I have a resolution that reads as follows, that the following summary of accounts be received by council for information And the total is $2,594,870.59. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for this one?
Yes, Mayor Kasenberg, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And can I call on Deputy Mayor? No, not Deputy Mayor. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our seconder?
Yes, I would love to second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Discussion or debate? Anything, Council? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. So that moves us along here. For item 5.5, reports from the Manager of Environmental Services, we have a single item tonight. Item 5.5.1 invites council to review and update Schedule Q of the fees and licenses bylaw. I'll invite Mr. Hackett for his comments on this matter. If I think he's with us, right? Mark, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and Council. This is simply looking at the fees for next year. We traditionally use a financial plan for our water systems and also one for the wastewater systems to help us guide us on new fees and the rates that we charge. The last wastewater system financial plan was updated on July 6th recently of this year, and the water system financial plan was updated on January 7th of 2019, and it should be completed another review and update that we'll have finished by the end of the year. These financial plans help us plan for the future. And over the past few years, you probably have noticed that we've had an increased demand for wastewater capital projects. That has resulted in the plan moving forward. We've been increasing the wastewater rate by 5% each year, and we've been increasing the water rate by 0.5%. I've included a couple of attachments for council's information. The first one being water and wastewater rates. It's highlighted in yellow. That's simply adding the 0.5 and 5% across the board there. I think the interesting part of this one is near the bottom. It's the residential bi-monthly fees based on the average water usage of 36 cubic meters over 2 months, and the effect of the proposed increase would be approximately $5.50 on the average water and sewer bill. I've also included the actual Schedule Q for council's information. Again, I won't go through each one, but you'll note that all of the water ones have increased by 0.5 and the wastewater has been increased by the 5%. And I could take any questions if council has any.
Thanks, Mr. Hackett. Council, any questions or first comments on this matter? Thoughts, anything? Okay. So I have a resolution and a bylaw, 2 items of business related to this matter. The first, the resolution that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the proposed amendments to Schedule Q of the fees and licenses bylaw for implementation for the first billing in 2021. Councillor Anstead, can I call on you to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our second?
Yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate from council? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Now to the bylaw. That bylaw number 139-2020 being a bylaw to amend the rates and fees bylaw Schedule Q, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Deputy Mayor Kellum to be our mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And can I get Councillor Richardson as our seconder?
I will gladly second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on the bylaw? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We have for item 5.6, no report for consideration tonight from our manager of operations. That skips us ahead to item 5.7, reports from the fire department. We have before us a proposed bylaw action associated with participation of our fire department in the County of Perth Mutual Aid Plan. And who do we have with us tonight? Chief Smith? So Fire Chief Ed Smith to brief us on this proposition. Mr. Smith, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Yes, this is just a housekeeping requirement that we review the mutual aid plan and update it and rescind the original bylaw and put in place a new bylaw to participate in the mutual aid plan under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act of 1997.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions or comments for the chief? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration, a bylaw resolution that reads as follows: the bylaw number 131-2020 being a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw 53-2014 and to provide for the participation of the North Perth Fire Department in the County of Perth Mutual Aid Plan, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. And the bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for that one?
I so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you be our seconder for that one?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to agenda item 6. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? I think Councillor Andreessen is up first. Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I just wanted to have perhaps our have Fran, our person from finance, to give us some about that report that we received and what the implications are for us in development charges. Thank you.
Good evening. I would be more than happy to provide a report. We've actually just been waiting for the province of Ontario to pass this legislation so we can move forward. We have been in consultation with our consultant that provided us with the development charges plan, and we're sort of all just sort of perched ready to go with the next stage, and certainly we will be bringing back those documents that are required to transition us from development charges to this combined fee schedule. And I believe we will be moving forward with that in the next 6 months to certainly beat the clock for the 2-year period that we have to complete the work.
Okay. Councillor Andreessen, thank you. My mic wasn't on. Now I made the WebEx mistake. Councillor Andreessen, did you want a written report as opposed to the verbal report you just received?
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'm just wondering, maybe through you, will Fran be providing further information about this in the months ahead as we prepare this? And if so, then I wouldn't really see a report necessary.
Okay, so Fran, I think Ms. Hill, sorry, to be formal, I believe you've given indication that there is movement afoot for us to take action as a corporation and to prepare the ground for the changeover from the current situation to the new fee structure that the minister has explained in his note to us about the regulations. You said 6 months. Is that when we'll next hear about this matter?
I'll be bringing to council as it unfolds the changes that we will be proposing. I would like to try and achieve some change in the next 6 months with a period of time then for our development community to get used to the change, whatever it is going to be. And if you would like just a bit of a report through, bring council up to date of what the possible choices are, or if it's all right, we'll just bring back the report to council of draft scenarios that they could consider for moving forward with a new fee schedule for the new fees, the amended development charges fees, and the parkland requirements that will be put in place. But I would like to wait until our consultant has digested everything that got passed on the 18th of September, and then we will move forward with a proposal for council's consideration.
Okay, so Councillor Andreessen, do you feel this can wait at this point then?
Yes, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's noted that staff has indicated it will bring forward a report in due course when appropriate information becomes more available. Any other requests for reports from council related to staff reports or reports from our committees? Anything? Okay, we're not seeing anything. We've received no items of correspondence beyond those already shared for council's disposition. So that moves us past agenda item 7 to agenda item number 8. Again, we have no further bylaw proposals before us tonight. That moves us on to agenda item number 9. Councillors, are there any notices of motion from you this evening? And we're not seeing any indication of that. That brings us to agenda item number 10. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Again, a queue up through the clerk and the chat function. Anything, Clerk Bertels? Oh, okay. So Clerk Bertels has one. Let me just set the stage for her to speak so that we don't create the interminable chaos of audio and video here. So just give me a second and then she'll take over.
Sorry, Council, my photo's sideways, but what I wanted to announce is that the Moncton Child Care Center opened today. Just, it's been a lot of work, and we're pretty excited to have that door open. If I could turn that picture, I would. And hopefully, as per our conversation with Councillor Anstead, that shortly this week I'm going to get the license from the Ministry of Education for St. Mary's, and we'll open that door just as quickly. Just for information.
This is very exciting news, of course. Snoopy, Mayor Todd, drove down there on Sunday to just have a look, see for himself, and certainly it's all smiles. So we're very excited about the development of that daycare center. The second one coming in fairly close behind it. It's looking very promising indeed. Any other announcements, Council or staff? Seeing none, that brings us to agenda item number 11. We have no matters for consideration in the closed session of council this evening, which means we have nothing to discuss in agenda item number 12, which is our typical period for reporting from a closed session. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I have a draft for our confirmatory bylaw, which reads as follows. The bylaw number 140-2020 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for this one?
Also move it.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstead, will you serve? Oh, you cannot.
I can't, sorry.
Hold on, I'll get there. I just need to go through my list. Councillor Duncan.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. So that's carried. Thank you. Yep, that's carried. Exactly. And that brings us to the adjournment point. Councillors, we have completed deliberations and taken action on the business that did come before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any further business? Seeing no indication of that, I have a motion to adjourn, which reads as follows: that the council meeting adjourns at 7:41 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, October 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I will move that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Council, we are adjourned until Monday, October 5th. Thanks all. Have a good night.